Drums, please.
Hey everybody, c.note here, and welcome to DOPEamine, the show that is all about mental health empowerment. Today on the show, I want to talk to you, my fellow INTPs, about a concept that I'm calling the logical paradox. In a sense, it's a way of understanding how INTPs, how we as INTPs, because this is something I've done myself, I'm not just preaching at you, how sometimes us as INTPs can use logic as a way to keep us hidden from the world, to keep us scared, to keep us from feeling what we need to feel, from relationships, from taking risks, from trying new things, experimenting, experiencing new careers, opportunities, and really allowing for our minds to grow as big as it needs to, because we want to have more experiences. We want to be able to understand the world. We want to be able to help people at the end of the day. You might not feel that right now, but I know a lot of INTPs have this big picture ambition of some kind. Sometimes that manifests into an occupation, coaching, the way you want to talk to people, the way you want to give advice and support. And for INTPs, that's largely because we have what's called a rightness fixation. We like being right about things, and being right about things can sometimes be this tricky, slippery slope when it comes to navigating the world. It's harder to take risks when you want to be right all the time, because if you want to be right, you're going to have to risk being wrong. And to not risk being wrong means that you're going to be actually wrong more of the time. So it gets really tricky. It's a bit, it feels like this paradox of not wanting to be wrong, so therefore we fixate it on the things that we can control. So I want you to think about this way. I want you to imagine a cube or a square. That's a rectangle. I just drew a rectangle. I couldn't, it's not that I just drew a kind of a square and I'm being picky about it. Nope, I went crazy. I was just let's square. It was that's not a square. Square. So it's, I'm gonna get distracted by that. So I want you to think about a cube or a 2D square. And think about this as your mind. This is the place that you really enjoy. This is where you like to be. This is where you spend your time. And this place inside of this square has all the things that you know, all the things that you love, that you appreciate. The challenge is that you have to go outside of the square sometimes. And every time you leave the square and you come back to the square, everything that's inside of it has rearranged. It's like coming back to a room and everything that's in the room is suddenly different. It's kind of like if you've ever played a roguelike game, these are games that when you play through the level as far as you can, and then Enter the Gungeon is a game that I really enjoyed. And you go into the dungeon, and every time you go in, the rooms kind of change configuration. You don't know where the enemies are, you don't know where the furniture is, all of that stuff. So think of it that way. This cube space, this cube square, square, ends up, even though it's not, it's totally a rect. Anyway, think of this. I'm having a hard time getting through this one. There's a lot to explain. This square is something that every time you leave it, the configuration changes every time you come back to it. So every time you come back to it, it's going to have new stuff in there. It's going to be rearranged, and you have to kind of rearrange it and take the time when you come back to the cube to reconfigure it to your liking, right? And that takes time to do. You can call that our introverted thinking process, is taking all of this new information that we've taken from the outside world, and now we have to reconfigure it. And that can sometimes feel frustrating, because the logic that we can have around that is to simply say, well, if it's going to change every time, and I like the way that my room's configured, why would I ever leave? Why would I should just stay here and just, deal with things the way that they are. The challenge with that is that what the cube doesn't tell you is that if you leave your furniture, your thoughts, your experiences in the same place for too long, they begin to crystallize. And as they crystallize, You wake up one morning and you realize that you want to move some furniture around. You want to change the layout, but you realize that you can't, that it's stuck. It's stuck to the floor. You can't move the furniture. You can't move the bed or the couch or the fridge. And this happens with people too. People come into your life and they hang out in your space. And if they're not, growing themselves, or your interpretation of them is not growing and changing, then they're also going to be stuck. And you're going to be stuck with it as opposed to choosing it. So the thing is that when you go out into the world and you go experience new things and you learn new things and take in new concepts, new patterns, new experiences, and you come back into this cube, you're able to actually take some of the new things and put them where you want them to be, and then discard some of the stuff as well. You don't have to keep everything. You can move things around freely as long as you're continuing to stay in motion and continue to move things. Every once in a while, there's going to be a personal sense of a code, a concept, a career, a person, books, experiences. Like for me, that's like baseball and poker and being from Philly and playing music. Like, there's so much of my life that I want to keep inside of my cube that I will continue to, I'm okay with some of that stuff crystallizing a little bit. But it's a challenge when something crystallizes that we don't necessarily want to, or we go back to it and realize we neglected this thing. Now that we want to go change it, it's hard to move it. Every time, it's like you leave the cube and then you come back and you're like, why hasn't this thing changed? It's not the same thing as just going out into the world and experiencing something. Now you have to do this work to actually dislodge this thing and make it something that's actually helpful for you in your life. And for a lot of the times, INTPs, we allow ourselves to continue to allow the lines of logic to let things eventually crystallize. Our perceptions of the world, our perceptions of people, that can be race, gender, political party based, that can be what you assume about the world, what you assume about people, what you assume about what you need or don't need, your personal, mental, physical, spiritual health. You could be, tied to a religion or not having a religion. And once you kind of get to this place where you need to switch and it's no longer helpful for you to have this thing or no longer have this thing and you want to put something there, it's hard to dislodge that. That takes a lot of repeated trips outside of the cube. That takes time for you to go find new tools, new perspective, new questions to ask. Because the more we go through the world and try to just allow statements to run our lives, we let these things crystallize in our cube, and the things that crystallize may not be things that we choose to have in our life. So the more that you choose to let things crystallize in terms of the things that you bring back and that you enjoy and you actually want in your life, the people, items, the situations, your perceptions, your ideas, the things you want to play with, your ability to develop a career, all of those things that you want in your life, you can either have these preconceived notions that you won't have these things and allow your logic to continue to allow you to not go outside the cube, to not go experience new things. When in fact that if you don't go outside, you're going to be stuck with what you have, which means your initial sense of logic is just going to be that. You're not going to expand, you're not going to grow, you're not going to change. And me telling you this is not to just make you feel bad. This is to allow you to understand that there may be some ways in which you're allowing your logic, your understanding of yourself, of the world, of the way that you think, you're letting that keep you inside. You're telling yourself, I don't need to change. Nothing needs to grow. I don't need to understand things differently. I understand things the way they are now. And when things change, when you go out into the world and then you come back to your cube, it feels painful sometimes. It feels like you're constantly reevaluating your sense of self. You're constantly judging yourself. INTPs, we judge ourselves a lot. And one of the things that I can offer you is to try to think about your objective nature of yourself, trying to look at data and information as something, it is what it is, to do that for yourself, that I'm thinking about things and I'm struggling because sometimes that's A, that could be just part of my wiring and the way that I am, or B, that there is time for me to grow and I should, stop limiting myself from that growth. So there's a lot here to kind of coalesce and understand. But the main idea is that I want to encourage you that risk and getting into motion is actually how you eventually create and select your personal sense of safety, right? So over time, you start the cube starts to morph and change. It starts to become something that is indiscernible between the cube and the outside world. You start to let in more natural light. More people can kind of come in and out. And if someone violates or tries to come in and say, hey, your couch sucks, you can say, hey, I chose this couch. This couch is important to me. This isn't something I just landed on. This isn't something that I just defaulted to. That this is something I went through life and I chose, and this is important to me. And I'm pointing to my couch. That's why I'm going and pointing this way. But this is something that's important to me. And I do that with my literal furniture in my house all the time. We just got side tables that I actually have to build, but I'm really excited about them because those are going to last a long time. But it's something I chose. The things that I have in my room right now are totes that are turned upside down. That's not something I chose. I just needed that as scaffolding. It's just kind of a placeholder. And there's a lot that's in our cube, in our heads, in terms of our values and our ideas and the way that we approach logic that are just kind of the default things that we're just kind of sticking with and staying used to and stuck to. And they're starting to crystallize. And it's your responsibility as a person to shake those things loose, to allow yourself to say okay, I'm going to be wrong over and over again. And that's actually exciting. That's the idea that you can actually learn new things and start to feel empowered by the fact that as you expand, your cube is going to grow and change, and you're going to experience more things and bring more of the world to you instead of having to go further into the world more and more. You can find this balance of feeling empowered to actually just do more things, to experience more people, to have greater connections and not feel so protective of what you have all the time. Because there's this assumption, there's this logical assumption that the world is only a negative place, that the world is only gonna ruin you. And sure, we might run into difficult things, but those difficult things make us stronger. And making us stronger is what allows for us as INTPs to really do our best work. And I want to encourage INTPs to do your best work. There's a culture of self-deprecation amongst INTPs that I'm trying to shake loose, that I'm trying to change. And I'm hoping that you, as the watcher, listener, this person having this conversation with me, can at least start to see a little bit of what I'm trying to do here through coaching, through support. So I want to support you. That's why I bring this up. That's why I bring up this logical paradox of how we can kind of get stuck in this idea of I want to be right. But of course you can be right if you're in control of your domain. But if you venture out and you try new things, you'll learn that life is not that simple. And it's okay to be wrong. And being wrong is actually a stepping stone to becoming right and to actually learning more things about the world and being able to share what you learn about the world and connect, be a great teacher. And, whether you want to become a coach or a better creator, artist, etc., these are the ways to do it. Get outside the cube, bring the new stuff back, rearrange, do the work. Because I know it sucks. I know it hurts sometimes. It feels frustrating. You feel like you can't move. You feel like you can't think. You feel like you have too much to worry about, too much to rearrange, and you'd rather just stop and play video games and not do anything about anything. But I assure you that the more in motion you get, the more you'll be ready to take on the world, the easier and smoother things will get. And, you'll actually contribute to the world. And I want to see that of you. So this has been an important video for me because I feel like this coalesces a lot of the main ideas of what I want to do for INTPs. I want to support you. I want to encourage growth. I want to give you a place to speak. I want to give you an opportunity to see an INTP who is speaking and sharing concepts, but being playful and sometimes screwing up. Like, that happens. It's fine. You don't have to be perfect. There's no such thing. And, for me as a coach, as a creator, as someone who is, creating content on this channel, I want to be here for you. And I want you to be there for yourself. So sometimes that means thinking about things, doing some research, meeting new people, going out into the world safely and doing whatever you can. And then connecting, leaving comments, asking questions, signing up for coaching. If that's something you want to do, there's links below. I also have programs and all this other stuff. But your path is your choice. And that's the thing, is like, I want to encourage you to not just be a victim of your own logic, that you can let your logic go a little bit and you can just go and experience something, let it come into your world, experience something new, and just be pleasantly surprised every time you walk in the door and there's some new things to add to your repertoire. It's kind of like Animal Crossing. You go and you add a new thing and you're like, great, now I've got a basement. Let me put new stuff in my basement, right? So that's really what INTP expansion is all about. And it's really about getting through some of this logical paradox. I'm going to do the best I can to, continue to refine this concept to explain it a little bit better. But, if you think of this square and allow yourself to just think about some of the things that are in your cube. Like, what are some of the things that are starting to crystallize? What sense of self are you not challenging? And what are you afraid of? It's not something you have to share publicly. It's okay. This is stuff you have to work through for yourself. There's a lot of stuff I'm always working through, especially when it comes to like big picture world things, the way that I understand people, and even my relationship to letting go of certain things. There's so much we're always growing and healing and changing. But I feel like, going through the motions and learning new things will allow for new opportunities. And we're dynamic. There's a long life. There's a lot of time to do new things. So take a risk. Be wrong. It's cool. I'm not going to judge you for it. So don't judge yourself. Just try. Just go do it. So with all that said, if you want to do coaching with me, one-on-one, there's opportunities below. Click the link to go do that. There's also other email signups, programs, other ways to get involved, or just leave a comment. Let me know what some of the things you're stuck on are. What are some of the things that you would like in your cube? And, that could be, again, relationships, careers. What are some of the stuff you want to play with? And sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised by what shows up. So with all of that said, because this is a long video, but thank you for being here and still watching this. I appreciate you. DOPEamine.life is where the podcast is, articles, all that stuff. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll catch you next time on DOPEamine. See ya.